great for the air-cooled stuff, which meant that you're either in the desert or in Russia, you weren't worried about either boiling the water or freezing the water. Very, very clever piece of kit there. Behind that is a Phantom ambulance, again designed and built in the 30s, beautifully made piece of kit, and if you look inside those, you will see the extent that the Germans equipped their stuff. Everything is in there, with oxygen and all the bits and pieces. We've got what looks like an Opel Blitz lorry towing a light anti-tank gun. Those anti-tank guns were known as the door knockers because they didn't really do the job. After about 1940, they realised that, the small pack anti-tank gun there was not cutting the mustard, and the German anti-tank artillery got larger and larger and larger. Behind the style with the air-cooled engine was a large, I think it's 150mm mortar being towed there behind. Germans were great users of the mortar and extremely skilled, and by this time of the war in 1944, after the Allied invasion, they could really drop those rounds almost down a chimney stack. They've been doing it for so many years. Behind the little Opel Blitz with the towing the anti-tank gun, we got the Kugelwagen. This was a sort of standard field car. People say it was the German equivalent of the Jeep, but actually it's very, very different to the Jeep. It's only two-wheel drive. It can literally be lifted up by 5 guys, but it has a thing called a limited slip differential, which means it gets a great deal more grip when in the mud than a normal car, but still only two-wheel drive. Very, very cheap to produce. Everything was pressed steel, and again, that famous air-cooled engine, which went on for 50 years to power the Beetle, both before and after the war. Loads of variants of that were produced, some with radios and some, as we see there, a sanitator one, which is a first aid one, which would have a stretcher section across the back, and alongside that Cougar comes the one which is armed and carries an MG34 in the back. So there's a pair of 222 armoured cars, and behind that the Tiger. These enormous tanks equipped with an 88mm gun were the bogeyman of Normandy. The Allies were accused of getting something called Tiger fever, because they began to say that every single tank that came along was in fact a Tiger. This particular vehicle is one built along the lines of the one that we used on Saving Private Ryan, and it's actually built on a Russian T-34 chassis. When these were built for Private Ryan, the legend of the Tiger had even reached Steven Spielberg, and when he first saw these tanks, he said, I thought they were as big as a house, because even he had been fooled by it. That is one enormous piece of kit. Weighs over 50 tonne, has a 22-litre V12 Maybach engine, but still running on petrol. The Germans, like the Allies, mostly ran on petrol, which meant that if it did get hit, it was very prone to fire. They were unreliable, basically. They were a wonderful tank, but mechanically there was so much weight and so much power, they couldn't build a gearbox which would take it. And they were forever breaking down. In fact, a lot of the time they were known as the furniture vans, because they were stationary for so long, and then they would use them as, if you like, a mobile pillbox, or mobile knot, in the case. Behind that, we've got a Panzer III, which, again, standard light tank of the Blitzkrieg years, and many, many variants produced of the Panzer III. Relatively cheap to produce, relatively efficient. Again, as the war went on, larger and larger guns were fitted on them, and various other variants of that were produced, including something called the Stug, which you will see just by the entrance to the arena. Now the Stug, with the armoured plates on the side, was an assault gun rather than a tank. This means that the gun can't actually traverse, but the advantage of it is that it's